And we're live. All right, I think we're live. Yeah, we're live. We're live. Hi, everybody. Let me know who's there. Let me know. I can see Joy's already there. Yes, we're here. Okay, there we go. The chat is here. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Greetings, Jay. Let's keep it going. Yeah, that's the way. We need to talk more about these topics. We're here. We're here. Here to talk about two great men. We're gonna try to make it short because these two people are just so special. I might end up doing a 3-4 hour live if I don't if I don't keep it short. But don't worry, I made it so that I structured it so that we don't, take too long. Thank you, Carol. Let's see how many people are in the live. 24. Let's wait for a bit more people. And then we're gonna start this live about these two great men. Peace, family. Wow, thank you for the donation. Thank you for the donation from Fordang Nibalum. Thank you so much for the generous donation. That's really generous. Thank you. Cheikh Anta Diop, Dr. Chancellor Williams. I'm just so excited to talk about this. For all I do. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So, should we start? Let's get right into the topic, right? The people are gonna come and they will join as we go. The ones that are already here, let's go. We're almost reaching 30 people, so let's get right into it, right? So, what is the live about? Today, we're gonna go over how these two great men, these legends, let's just say, because these are legends, how these two legends reached the conclusion they reached about African history, that it started in the Nile Valley. They were like, wait, why am I being brought to the Nile Valley? How did these two men reach the same conclusion? That's what we're gonna see. So, that's what we're gonna see. Oh, why is it doing this? Okay. That's what we're gonna see. Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop, Dr. Chancellor Williams. Let's get back to the beginning. Right. So that's the live. The topic: Williams versus Diop. How two great scholars separately discovered the truth about Kemet. And the truth is, you know, the truth is that civilization was majority Black African, as we've seen throughout our live streams, our videos analyzing from multiple channels, right? Now we're here to discover how they discovered the truth, like why and were they looking for it? Let's get right into it. Right, we're now at 31 people. That's great. Let's get right into the topic. Right. So, as you know, I just want to first start by telling you that I've made two videos on these two great scholars separately. I first made a video about Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop. You can go check that on my channel, right? You'll find the scholar who proved Egypt was black. Then I made recently a video about Dr. Chancellor Williams, and these two videos just blew up. It seems people really want to know about our great scholars, right? So I made two videos on this topic already. So I'm just going to do a brief introduction about their life here, and we're just going to move on to how they came up with the same conclusion while working separately, one in America, one in Africa, or yeah, one in Africa. Should I say Europe as well, because Diop studied in Europe. So yeah, he studied in Europe, but yeah, he started studying in Africa. Then for university, he went to Europe, basically, because at the time Africa had no decent university, if it had any at all. Yeah, so I made two videos. You can go to those videos to get the full life of these great men. But here we're not gonna go into their life, what they did, no, we're not gonna go into that specifically, right? Like their books and all. That is for the video that I've already made. So go check that out on the channel. So we're gonna do a brief introduction of each scholar, right? A brief introduction. Who are these two legends? Why do they matter? Those are the questions. Great topic. Glad you are giving due props to these two great men. Thank you, Roy. Hello, Wildflower. Right. Let's get right into a brief introduction of these two men. Okay, we have on the left is Dr. Chancellor Williams, and on the right is Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop. We're going to start with the elder. It's Dr. Chancellor Williams. Look at when he was born. He was born really early on, like 1893. Dr. Chancellor Williams was born in the USA in 1893 in South Carolina. That's where he was born. And I learned that South Carolina is a really racist place. Like, they don't like other people, should I say. That's what I learned. And he still managed to get to university and achieve great things in spite of all the many racist people in his town trying to block him. So that is a great achievement. Dr. Chancellor Williams, American historian and sociologist, great sociologist and author of many books, the greatest of which is The Destruction of Black Civilization. And as I said, you can go back to my video on Chancellor Williams to go deep into his story and why he matters. Then we have then we have the fact that Dr. Chancellor Williams was basically well-known scholar all over the world. Everybody wanted to meet him. Everybody that had heard of his work, wanted to meet the man. Great scholars like Dr. Um, was this Dr. John Henry Clark, Joseph Ben Yochanan, and um, Ivan van Sertima. All of them met him. You know, you can just imagine the great type of conversations that was going on among these great minds. Then we have Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop from Senegal, was born in 1923. He was born in Senegal, that is West Africa. Grew up there, studied under colonialism, then went to France to study, to further his studies as a historian, chemist, anthropologist, sociologist. You name it, Diop did it. Math, everything. This guy, he did everything. And it was quite amazing to read about what he had done. It's so crazy that Diop was so he had so many diplomas and certificates to his name. It's just crazy. So Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop, African historian, went to France to study, graduated from the University of Paris. That's Cheikh Anta Diop for you, right? Then then we have the fact that other people as well, once they read Diop's work, wanted to meet him. Dr. John Henry Clark wanted to meet Cheikh Anta Diop as well. They actually met. And it is actually thanks to Dr. It's actually thanks to Dr. John Henry Clark that we got the work of Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop translated to English in 1974. So big thanks to Dr. John Henry Clark. Ivan van Sertima also, I think they met. I think he met Diop. They all met, like these great guys. And this is a picture of Diop and Theophilo Benga, another great scholar. I think we're going to make a video about him too later on. Yeah, these are the great scholars. So that's a brief introduction on them. Studied, great historians, great African historians. Great African historians did great things for us, for the history, for the knowledge of our history. Now, let's get right into how these two guys, how did they get to their conclusion? Right? How did they get to their conclusion? How did that happen? Did they the question you often hear is, among detractors is that, oh no, these two are charlatans. They wanted Egypt to be black. This is why they even mentioned it at all. But the truth is that Egypt is not black, right? This is what you hear. That it's a deep-seated feeling of them wanting Africa to have a grand history. These Afrocentrists, right? But the reality is otherwise. It's really otherwise, and you're gonna discover through this live that the reality is completely different from what the detractors want you to believe. It was not from a deep-seated feeling of wanting Africa to be this great place with great history and have grand history. They just wanted to know their history. And this is what led them to their journeys, to their respective journeys. And we have the great thought here, our God of science and knowledge. Let's get right into it. Diop and Chancellor Williams. Why did they start this journey? How did they start it? Well, as I mentioned, it's because they wanted to discover what African history was. Like, was there an African history? Because a lot of us don't get it at this point, because we grew up in school learning about African history, but these two did not grow up with the same privilege we have today. They grew up with People telling them, teachers, authorities in your life, parents, teachers, priests, to everybody telling you that Africa has no history. Africa simply doesn't have anything, historically speaking. They don't have anything to speak of. And these two were like, how can a place with people have no history? It doesn't make any sense. So they set to this journey of discovering everything about their history. Everything. They were like, no. Let's check if we really have nothing. Let's go. Right? Because this was the rhetoric among Europeans. Like a great philosopher like Hegel, German philosopher, look at what he says about Africa. Africa has no history and did not contribute to anything that mankind enjoyed. This is Hegel. Africa has no history and is no historical part of the world. His view is still very, very much shared among certain people who think that Africa has nothing to offer in terms of history and contribution to mankind, despite Africa being the very place mankind came from. The earliest history of mankind is found in Africa, both in the biological sense and even in the civilizational sense. You find the oldest traces in Africa. But Africa is no historical part of the world. Another guy who said it was Hugh Trevor Roper. I mentioned him in the recent video about Chancellor Williams. This guy also, he was one of the prominent guys who started the dark continent trope. Africa is a dark continent. They have no history to speak of. It's really dark over there. There's nothing to speak of in terms of history. And then fast forward in 2007, French president goes to Dakar to speak to the youth, the African youth. And this is Dakar. This is a place where Cheikh Anta Diop lived. This is the country of Cheikh Anta Diop. Cheikh Anta Diop, having graduated in Paris, the very place where this man rules. Cheikh Anta Diop, he goes to the place where Cheikh Anta Diop was born and he says, Africa is no historical part of the world. He basically says, Africa, he said something along the lines, Africa has not entered history. They stayed in this backward thing of just the monotonous thing of hunting and gathering. That's what he was talking about. In the country of Cheikh Anta Diop, the level of disrespect this man has. This is a man whose country is filled, whose country's museums is filled with African artifacts, and they're like, there is no history in Africa. The audacity. This is what Diop and Obenga grew up with. Like people telling them. Now, this is French president. Anybody with a brain, even people from his country, scholars from his country, would contradict him heavily on that. They would correct him right away. But at the time Diop and Williams were growing up, there was no such thing as African history. So they were like, well, so we have no history? Like our people, black people, African people have no history? Is that really true? And so what did they do? At early ages, very young age, they both started reading everything they could about African history, especially Williams, who started at a very young age. He started when he was in 5th grade, 6th grade, picking up anything he could read about black people. Everything. Yeah, someone says, go my brother, it's worse. It was at the University of Cheikh Anta Diop, like the audacity, right? You go to the University of Cheikh Anta Diop and you claim that Africa has no history. Cheikh Anta Diop has written a book called Pre-Colonial Black Africa, highlighting the history of West Africa. And you go to that university and tell the youth, you have no history. No, man, that is audacity to another level. Look at his face. Look at that face. The arrogance. Anyway, yeah, so these two men, especially Dr. Chancellor Williams, he started very early on. He said in his book that he discovered three things before he left high school: that Egypt was black, that civilization started in Africa, and Africa is the origin of mankind. Among those three, you can go check my video for the precise quotes. And Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop, once he reached Paris, man, he started reading. He started reading everything. That was like, man, I'm gonna read everything about that I find where they mention Africa, black people. And they started reading. Both of them used the same thinking. I'm gonna go read. Let's see if in these documents from the people who say, let's see from these documents from the people who say that we are not a historical part of the world. Let's see what their ancestors, the people who came before them, say. And they started reading. And when you start reading, first you go, what have the explorers, because Europeans invaded Africa, so what are the explorers, the early explorers say? What did they say? Then you discover, oh, they're saying, no, we found places with roads, paved roads, kingdoms, organized political forces, like they have an army, they have this, the king, I'm meeting the king. Wait, so how is a place with a king not a historical part of the world, right? Then you read further, Arab explorers who go to West Africa, and what do they say? Oh, this place is so well organized. People are so virtuous. People don't steal here. Like it's great. There's a University of Timbuktu. Writing, you're like, wait, what? This is what we were told, that this is a non-historical place of the world, but there are books in West Africa, and there was a university that everybody wanted to attend, Timbuktu. And it is spoken of in European texts, in Arabic texts, as this great place of knowledge, this place of wonder. Okay. They keep on reading. Like, you know, the Arabs, everything. They discover more and more that Europeans wrote down about Africa. And they were like, well, this is clearly historical documents that prove Africa had a history. Why aren't we taught this in school? That's the interesting part they found. And they keep on reading. Now, you see, this is, yeah, someone said, Aketo Feru. What's good, man? What's good, mate? Medieval West Africa is not to be underestimated. It is not. I can't wait to talk about that part of Africa. It's just very interesting. If you watch lectures of, what's his name? I forgot. Wow, thanks for the generous donation from Yelen Tala. Thank you, Yelen, for your generous donation. So yeah, that's, if you what was I saying? See, I lost myself. Yeah, if you go back to West Africa, like, it's really full of great stuff. Right, so these two, they keep on reading about the knowledge Europeans that have written about Africa. And guess where it takes them? It takes them to the Nile Valley. They're talking about Ethiopia, Egypt, black people. Wait, what? Ethiopia. They go to Ethiopia. They discover there's indeed a great literature. Aksum, Alyoda, and all those great kingdoms of East Africa, then they hear about Nubia, Kush, Meroe. They're like, wait a minute. Why weren't we taught this in school? Why? This is stuff like, when you discover these kind of things. Yeah, this is what I wanted to say. When you discover these kind of things, you can't help but want to read more because you were taught that there was nothing. And now you're discovering a mountain of things. And man, you just want to discover what that mountain has to hide. Like what is at the top of the mountain. So they go on to read. And what do they discover? They discover that Egypt was of African origin, was considered black, was called black on numerous times. And it's in books, and these two are often what? They're often described as people who wanted Egypt to be African, and they wanted to create a false narrative about Africa. Right? This give Africa this grand narrative no matter what. But their method was not. Their method proves that they were not anything like that. Their method proves to you, actually, that these two were very critical thinkers and very scientific in their approach. For example, Dr. Chancellor Williams said the following about investigating African history in spite of the lies. For it would be a continuing degradation of African people if we simply destroyed the present system of racial lies embedded in world literature, only to replace it with glorified fiction based more on wishful thinking than the labors of historical research. This is what he said. But the detractors are always like, no, these guys want to give a grand narrative to Africa. They're creating myth as history. They did not. They don't create myth as history. This is their method. They're like, if I'm wrong, correct me. It's science, it's historical research, it's rigorous research. If there is any problem, let me know in the research. This is what he said. But you would never hear the detractors come up with these quotes or say that he said this. They will just ignore, proving that they probably did not read the book. And Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop said the following: the only salvation is direct knowledge. No laziness can exempt us from this effort. One must absolutely obtain direct knowledge. With equal training, truth triumphs. Train yourself. Arm yourself with science to the teeth and seize your cultural heritage, or drag me through the mud when you get to that direct knowledge and find that my arguments are inconsistent. Does this sound like someone who did not want to question anything you discovered? Does this sound like someone who was not a critical thinker? Who wanted to give a narrative, a grand narrative to Africa? No, these are critical thinkers. These are critical people. People who wanted to discover everything, no matter what the truth was. They just wanted to know that Africa had a history. And to study it deeply and give it to the new generation. This is what they wanted to be taught. This is what they wanted us to do. And so they kept reading. And what do they find? Scholars from Europe stating that ancient Egyptians were black. This is not them. This is not Cheikh Anta Diop or Dr. Chancellor Williams who started claiming this. This is white Europeans. Volney was born 100 years before I think 100 or 200 years, 150 years before Dr. Chancellor Williams. He went to Egypt, went to visit to study the Orient, because he was an expert of the Orient. He went to study the Orient, went to Syria, went to other places in the Middle East. Then he went to Egypt. And he arrives in Egypt, he sees the Sphinx, and he's like, wait a minute. This face is typically African. And he concludes that the ancient Egyptians must have been Africans. Here is what Volney said. The Count of Volney said, on seeing that head, typically Negro, in all its features, I remembered the remarkable passage where Herodotus says, as for me, I judge the Colchians to be a colony of the Egyptians because, like them, they are black with woolly hair. In other words, the ancient Egyptians were true Negroes of the same type as all native-born Africans. This is his conclusion because he sees the Sphinx, right? He sees the Sphinx and he's like, wait a minute. This Sphinx looks like your typical African. This Sphinx looks like your typical black African person. And then he remembers the quote from one of the oldest quotes from a direct observer of the ancient Egyptians. That is Herodotus, who went to Egypt around 450 BC. One of the earliest direct descriptions of Egypt and the people there. And what does he give us as descriptions? Consistent descriptions of them having black skin. You hear what he says here. They are black with woolly hair. Why is he using the word black? These are the people who read Greek every day and translated it as this, black with woolly hair. And it's really interesting that he had the quote in his head because he remembered. Oh, wait, didn't Herodotus say that the ancient Egyptians were black? Well, the statues corroborate what he says. The statues agree with him. And the Count of Volney concludes that the ancient Egyptians were true Negroes. This is his conclusion. 200 years before Cheikh Anta Diop, 150 years before Chancellor Williams. And like 250 something years before Afrocentrism was born. So you can't say it's black people who started saying that the Egyptians were black. It started with the Greeks thousands of years ago. And then the Europeans kept saying this. So what do you do when you're reading this? You go and look further. Because Volney also said, just think of this race of black men, today our slave, and the object of our scorn is the very race to which we owe our arts, sciences, and even the use of speech. When you read such a sentence, you're like, wait a minute, why is he saying this? I need to dig deeper. And this is what they did. They kept reading and reading about everything that Europeans had to offer about Africa. So they dig. Because around the time Herodotus was describing the ancient Egyptians, this is what they were drawing about the ancient Egyptians in Greece. These vases that probably the Europeans around the time of Volney, who was a scholar from the 1700s, this is what they were drawing. Black Africans with woolly hair, kinky hair, short, kinky hair, noses, flat noses, full lips. This is what they were drawing. Faces like that. So to the Greek of the time, the ancient Egyptian was a typical black African, like the Nubian and everything. Then you have another scholar. So, these scholars from Europe, 1700s. I think he was even earlier. I don't know which period Johann Blumenbach is. I think it's still from the Enlightenment period. Johann Friedrich Blumenbach What did this guy do? This guy argued that the ancient Egyptians must have been black because of the measurements he did among on their skulls and their limb proportions and all. He was like, they exhibit typical African Negro features. So what do you do when you discover this? Like, you're like, wait, so these are 1700s to 1800s Europeans saying that the ancient Egyptians were black, and these are respected figures in their field, right? Blumenbach is a respected man in his field. Was around this time, he was very respected, and then his research is today confirmed by the likes of Schumacher Keita, all these other scholars. I forgot what the names of these two women. I believe it's one of them is Sonia Arzakozuski and all. They have done body proportions, skull studies, anthropometric studies is the better word, because skull studies seems like you're just measuring the skull. No, they measure much more, right? Every tiny detail around the bone structure in the face, they measure that. And they found out that yes, the Kemites, the ancient Egyptians, the majority of them had typical tropical African proportions. I believe Sonia Arzakozuski described it as super negroid, right? It was, the word was super negroid. We have a donation from Roy Smith. Thank you, Roy Smith. Thank you, Roy Smith, for your generous donation. Thank you so much. Someone said, peace to KueliMika, Major Commander, hi. Peace to KueliMika, and Without History, Hotep, Hotep, my brother. Shoutouts to Without History, great YouTube channel as well. Doing great work. So, I get over, ain't no way we white kings gotta bring this to the masses. Yeah, ain't no way. They didn't want to. Someone said, are they Afrocentrists? Now, if Metatron was here. Yeah, because that's the definition, right? You say ancient Egypt was black, they are Afrocentrists, right? From Herodotus to, Without History. I'm just seeing you, bro. Shoutouts, man. Shoutouts to Without History. Great YouTube channel. Check out his channel. Great videos are coming out of there. And yeah, like these would be defined as Afrocentrists by Metatron and everyone who disagrees, right? They're like, oh no, you guys are Afrocentrists, right? Like, Greeks are the original Afrocentrists. Yes, hit flicks. Yes, they are. They are the original Afrocentrists. This is the history these people don't know. People who, the detractors, don't know and don't want other people to know, because there are those detractors who know this, but they don't want other people to know. How do you write a book going after Cheikh Anta Diop and you only go against the descriptions of ancient Greeks? You don't talk about the fact that many other people from Europe, authorities, were speaking on this. No, you don't. So Blumenbach was confirmed later, was later, peer reviewed. Not his research, but what he said was later confirmed by these great scholars. So they organized debates like this, around the time Blumenbach was there, Volney and them, they organized a great debate to decide whether ancient Egypt is black or not. And Blumenbach brought this skeletal evidence that they were black. They should be considered so-called Negro, as they would say around their time. And Volney was like, hey, I'm an authority here, so I've been there. I've seen the statues, the paintings, everything. And yeah, there is this. And then you have Vivant de Nom. Vivant de Nom, another French guy. He went with Napoleon Bonaparte to Egypt. In Napoleon's expedition to Egypt. So he took an artist, a respected artist, with him to draw things they would see. and they saw the Sphinx. And Vivant Denon, and I quote him here, he said the Sphinx has typical African features. That the Sphinx, the nose, the lips, and everything was African. He said that. And when you look at a picture of the Sphinx, you're like, yes, she is a black, or this person is black. I don't know. The Sphinx does have a few features that looks like a black woman, but I don't know. Some people say it's a king that is depicted. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, the Sphinx, probably a man, probably a woman. I don't know, but it's a black person. We just know with those features there, that subnasal prognatism, the full lips, even when they are degrading like this, they're still there. And you can see typical African features. Vivant Denon, this is an artist, someone who's used to see traits, someone who's used to notice different traits among people. And he says, oh, these are typical African traits. As you can all see, because whenever we draw a black person, we can see that someone drew a black person. Even if they don't put color on it, you can tell these are African features. But then some people will turn around and say art does not tell us anything. Then we have Henri Grégoire. You read, so this is Diop and Dr. Chancellor Williams. They keep reading. They find more and more. You find other scholars, like this is Abbé Henri Grégoire. So this is a priest. And he wrote a book, an entire book, detailing the history of Black Africa, saying that Black Africans have had great history. Look at what the Greeks wrote about Ethiopia. Look at what the Greeks wrote about Egypt. These were black people. He detailed that in his book. And all this is creating a grand narrative. And we're going to accuse two black men of creating a grand narrative when Europeans are the ones that started writing this and doing the research before them. Henri Grégoire, he's from, I think, the 1800s as well, or 1700s. So the time of Volney there. This is what they kept discovering. And then they discover statements from the father of Egyptology. This is the man who's often dubbed as the father of Egyptology, Jean-François Champollion. Champollion the Young, also known as Champollion the Young. He said the following about what he saw in Egypt. This is not a random man, as I've always told people. The detractors don't want people to know this, that a Frenchman, dubbed as the father of Egyptology, the man who deciphered the hieroglyphs, along with a British man, but yeah, he's the one who cracked the code at the end. So shout outs to Jean-François. He cracked the hieroglyphs. So this is an authority, no question about that. He's been in the field. He's been to Egypt with Napoleon. He went there. He studied the hieroglyphics. He studied the paintings. He's seen the pictures, the statues. And here is what he said. We find there Egyptians and Africans represented in the same way, which could not be otherwise, but the Namu, the Asians, and the Tamu, the Europeans, present significant variance. His words, not Cheikh Anta Diop's words, not Chancellor Williams' words, Jean-François Champollion's words. Father of Egyptology, that's what he said. But you have people coming and saying, no, they're all lying. This is a history few people know. I made a video detailing all this history. So this is how they discovered all this. They're reading. Imagine you're reading about African history and you dig deeper and you find that there was a debate about ancient Egypt being black or white in the 1700s, and they concluded at the end of the debate, consensus, scholarly consensus. They went like they were black Africans, like any other African. And the person coming to refute that later is one guy, and he does a poor argumentation that Diop destroys in his book. Nah, come on. So they read all this and they found out about this great stuff. So this is what they found out. They read it. You're reading statements like this. What are you gonna do? You're gonna hide it? You're gonna be like, oh no, it's gonna be uncomfortable. No, I'm gonna publish it. I'm gonna publish it. This is why Dr. Chancellor Williams, for example, had a hard time publishing his book. They did not want it published in America, but they did publish it. That's why you don't hear about it in school. That's why you don't hear about such great books in school. They don't want this knowledge out there. This is Europeans saying it years before. And then you have the Greeks consistently describing the ancient Egyptians as black, especially early on, like Aeschylus and Herodotus. These two dudes here, describing the ancient Egyptians as black. Early on, they had seen the Egyptians, they described them as black. Other books did so. Diodorus Siculus, many of them described the ancient Egyptians as black. And you're just supposed to skip that? No. And then after all these descriptions, you see these statues. You see these statues and you're like, wait a minute, now everything makes sense. I understand why Champollion, Volney, Blumenbach, and all these other guys said the same thing, that the ancient Egyptians were typical African people. When you see these artifacts, what can you conclude? What else can you conclude? You're gonna conclude that no, maybe it's a tanned olive skin. This skin is tanned olive skinned. After someone described this skin as black, as very dark, in Africa, you come in and say, oh, it's probably tan. It's probably a tan like this, a tan that is blacker than my complexion. With this is Mentuhotep, and then you go to the queen, the beautiful queen, Amosine Fertari, blacker, even than her great grandson Tutankhamen. Come on, these are the statues they saw, and they were like, wait. It's funny how you really, when you read The African Origin of Civilization, when you read that book, you can see how Diop really went, like, in his research. He first highlighted the fact that in his first chapter, it was basically him going over the fact that over Champollion, Jean-François Champollion's letters. This is the father of Egyptology, right? This guy. He went over his letters to his brother, and he says, wait, this is an expert that went to the field and said this. So let me go see the statues that he's talking about. And he sees these statues. He sees these great statues of African people. And he's like, wait. And then you see him posting the pictures at the end of the chapter. You're like, wait a minute. This is, after reading all that jazz, you know, the letter of Champollion, all the stuff, the first chapter of Cheikh Anta Diop. It was the pictures that did it for me. Pictures such as this one. You're like, wait a minute. We have statues like this in Egypt, in museums. And we're going to say that these are not black people. After reading the descriptions of the ancient Greeks, after listening to the opinions of experts, Europeans who went there with no agenda. Basically, I don't know. But yeah, these are curious people. Yeah, they went there with no agenda. Went there. These are open-minded people, you know. Those the right wings today would call woke. Right? Those that the conservatives, like, I'm sure these scholars would be called woke, because whenever you say anything about Black Africa being great or anything, call you woke nonsense. I've seen that in my comment section when Metatron did his response. I saw that people, oh, like, stop this woke nonsense, man. So what are you talking about? Anyway, you see pictures like this, right, with arguments about women always being depicted as yellow, especially queens who were always inside. And then you see this queen, the wife of Seti the First, having this black skin, basically, right? Dark brown skin, basically black skin, typical African hairstyle. And you're gonna tell me that no, these people weren't black. And then after seeing afros, oh man, I can just imagine how Diop and Chancellor Williams must have felt. Like, I think you just laugh at some point, right? Like the historical life. Like, is this true? Why? This is what led them. They did not go into the journey to discover African history thinking Egypt is the origin. No. Thinking Egypt is part of Black African history. No. They went into it wanting to discover what Africans did in the past. So you go to West Africa and everything leads you back to Egypt. Egypt, Nubia, the Nile Valley. Everything basically leads you back to the Nile Valley. You see pictures like this. You see statues like this. Diop and Williams had been to museums. They had been to universities. They had seen these things. And they were like, wait. I wish those two had things like the technology we have today. They would have shared a lot of beautiful pictures. Basically the way Dr. Runoko Rashidi did, because he also passed sadly. Dr. Runoko Rashidi had like pictures upon pictures. Like you would be blown away by the pictures he would be showing in his lectures. You're like, wait, what? Because he went to the museums. He took time to go to the museums. And he saw things. He took pictures, you know? And he just shows you great stuff. Yeah, someone said, I have Sudanese friends that look like the guy with an afro. I'm telling you. We all have friends that look like this. We all have friends that look like this. All of us. All of us have friends that look exactly like this, man. Rocking the afro. And still they'll tell you, nah, these are not black people. Come on. Come on, like, you Afrocentrists are trying to create a grand narrative about Africa. Stop it. Then you have pictures like this. Oh no, this one did it for me. When I saw this in a video by Home Team History, I was like, wait a minute, what? This exists. And we're still debating. This exists, and people would come boldly and say that there was no black people in Egypt. They put a poster face like this in their language. So whenever they want to say face, they have to draw this. And you're like, no, I say nay. Someone said, that is not an afro, that is a hat. True, I second that. This is clearly not an afro. Thank you for your correction. It's really funny that you would argue, right? That someone would argue that this is a hat, not an afro. It's clearly, it's painted black on with brown skin, dark brown skin on the statue. And we're like, no, this is not an afro. Even if the guy is basically in Africa. Anyway, and his ancestors originated in Africa. Like his people originated in Africa. Further south. Anyway, we have when you have a picture like this, a flat broad nose with nostrils popping out and full lips like that. We're like, no, not Africans. And short hair, by the way. Short hair. Then you have pictures like this. Narmer, the first king of Kemet. We don't really know, but this is often claimed as the first king of Kemet. Right? One of the earliest statues in Kemet looks like this. One of the earliest pharaohs in Kemet looks like this, like Mike Tyson. And we're gonna say that black people weren't in this civilization. We're just gonna say that. We're just gonna act like, no, this guy does not look at all like Iron Mike. Yeah. Iron Mike Tyson. Man, I love Mike Tyson, man. I love this man. The knockouts he gives people, man, it's crazy. Anyway, I bet Norman was that guy too, because man, if you look at Norman's palette, man, you saw what he did on that. to unify his land. You're like, yeah, this was Mike Tyson. This was Mike Tyson. Anyway, let's move on. Another picture that just shows you, like, this is right. This picture is Dynasty Zero. Dynasty Zero, earliest dynasties. You move on 5 dynasties later, or 4. This is Ninetjer, Pharaoh Ninetjer, of I think the 5th dynasty. And he looks like this. Old Kingdom. Full lips, flat broad nose, big face. This is what he looks like. This is what the earliest kings in Kemet look like. And they're gonna just pretend that no. This Diop and this Chancellor Williams is just lying. Come on, they're just lying. Alright, they read all that. Yeah, they did read. They did all that reading. And when you see these images, why? They just know that, like, how do you justify this? Like, okay, I read somewhere on many occasions, many experts agree with me, by the way, that these people were black, and we read direct accounts from people who saw them directly before they were invaded, that these people were black. And this is what I see when I go investigate the statues of each pharaoh from each dynasty. This is what I see. I see statues like Djoser, and I'm gonna be like, wait, no, maybe the people who saw them weren't really accurate in their descriptions. I'm gonna trust people who were not there and who did not see them and hear their arguments more. Doesn't make any sense, because you see faces like Djoser, like we all know an uncle that looks like Djoser, don't we? Put a 1 in the chat if you know an uncle that looks like Djoser. If you know someone that looks like Djoser, you've seen him around your neighborhood. You've seen this guy around your neighborhood, around your city, probably even in your family. He's there. Such a face. And look at a close-up at Djoser's statue here. You see that he's rocking locks beneath it. And I love the reconstruction the King's Monologue did about Djoser, how he really brought these locks to life, and the crown. It really shows you, because how would it be so voluminous if there was like really thin hair that was not voluminous here? It wouldn't make sense. It only makes sense with thick locks right there at the back. Yeah, you see, many people put like one. We all know someone. We all know someone that is like this with locks. And look at the statue. It even has brown skin. Thanks to the debunker for sending us these kind of pictures, because I didn't find such a detailed image close up. These are in museums. European museums, Western museums. And this is where Chancellor Williams and Diop studied. They studied in the West. One in America, then went to Europe later. One was in Africa, then went to Europe for his studies later. And this is what they saw. They saw this because the plunder of Africa had already started and was being completed by the time they became adults. They were taking all these artifacts, bringing them to their countries, and claiming them as their own, as French property, English property, whatnot. This is what they saw. And we're gonna pretend that no, it's not a black man, it's not. And this is another picture of another king in Kemet. Look at him. Full lips, broad nose, really thick nose. And we're gonna pretend no, this one is an invention by Afrocentrists who went to carve and placed it. Come on. Right? It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. So when you read all this, you're just like, wait, now. These people were tripping. And then you have another depiction of Djoser here. Metropolitan Museum. Full lips, full, like big, broad nose. Right? Broad, flat nose there. There. You have pictures like this. This is what Diop saw. He even put it in his book. This picture, he even puts this picture in his book. And he was like, wait, man. And this is after reading the likes of Volney, Herodotus, Diodorus, and all them. And this is what he sees when he goes to look at the pictures of the statues in Kemet. And, man, can you conclude otherwise? These are the statues. And you move on to the New Kingdom, to the Middle Kingdom. This is a pharaoh from the 11th dynasty, Mentuhotep II. Look at how he's depicted. Just look at how he's depicted. Short locks, full lips, flat nose. Another picture of Mentuhotep II. Full lips, still present, and the broad nose there. And we often like to compare him with the flat top, like the top fade here of this black boy. They look the same. The lips, the cheeks, the cheekbones, everything. You'll think this is the grandson, as I said in a previous video. These are the pictures Diop and Chancellor Williams saw. These. You see statues like this. I mean, you have a statue of a king in Africa. A king in Africa. His name is Sankara. You have a face like this. His name is Sankara, and you tell me he's still not black. For those who don't really get it, you have people like this. Sankara is a typical African name. Like the president of Burkina Faso, Thomas Sankara. I don't know if I can pop that on the screen. As you can see there. Thomas Sankara. Sankara, typical African name. So you have that, and you're like, you come to tell people, oh no, but this was not a black man. I thank you for the donation from Kadir Albert. Yeah, thank you. The king is here. The king's monologue. Shout out King's monologue. Make a mod quickly if you get a chance. KueliMika. Okay, I'll try to make a mod. Okay, I don't even know how to do that. I'm so new at these things. How do you... moderation activity. How do you do that? Okay, so moderation activity will be shown. Is that how you do it? Yeah, so that people don't post any weird comments. Remember to guard your privacy and abide by our community guidelines. Thank you, King, for your great donation, man. I really appreciate that. Thank you for the support, brother. Keep up the great work, fellow King. Yeah, you keep it up too. Make me a mod and I'll clean up a bit. Okay, how do you do that? Put a time. Go to channel activity, put. Oh, add as moderator. Okay. Managing moderator, standard moderator. Can block. Right, I'm just learning about this now. I always wondered how people do this moderating thing. Let me make someone else a mod. Aketo Faru, where are you? I know you, so like, can you help us mod over here? Where is Aketo Faru? Because the Aketo is always busy with us in the community. Really thank him. Aketo Faru, if you can post a comment because I can't see you. If you're there, Major Commander, who can be mod? Why are you ignoring my question? Is it because you don't know? Or someone? Okay. Thank you for the donation from Bermejel. Bermejel, thank you. Thank you for the donation. Really generous. Thank you. Thank you, Kadir, again for another donation. Hey, don't know if you know this, but Mike Tyson mentioned during a podcast that he got a DNA test and it said that he was Congolese. He's conscious. Oh man, Mike Tyson is Congolese? That is crazy. Okay, I love Mike Tyson, man. Like him. Hey man, my Congolese brother. He should come back to Congo, man. We love him. We love boxing here. Since Muhammad Ali versus Foreman, we're in love with boxing in this country. Anyway, that is great. That is great. He's conscious. That is great stuff. You know, I've seen a bunch of prominent black people trying to know at least which area do I come from, even if I can't go to the direct line of ancestors, like where specifically, which people, but at least I can you know, I can know which area and at least go there, you know. So yeah, we have people like Sankara Mentuhotep. His name is Sankara. He has lips like this, a face like this one, and we're gonna pretend that he's not black. He's a tan olive skinned Northeast African man that is separated from his other brothers, even though other people have other experts who had been there really disagreed with the fact that the Egyptians should be considered non-African, non-black, non-Negro, should we say. Like, we have another picture of Amenemhat III. The King's Monologue did a great reconstruction of this. A great reconstruction of Amenemhat the third. Let's see if we can find that on the King's Monologue channel. Right. I think there is a video. 15 ancient Egyptian. Yeah, so let's watch this video from the King's Monologue, okay? Shout outs to the King's Monologue. Follow everybody. Follow the King's Monologue. So, we're here. Amenhotep III. Great job. These are accurate depictions. Like, these are accurate reconstructions. I love this Quinty, man. I love this. It's so accurate. The most accurate I've ever seen is this Quinty reconstruction. Oh man. King, I don't know how you have that, man. This. Did you see, people? Did you see? Did you see that? It's crazy. It's crazy. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Ramses. Let's go. This is Ramses. You know, a lot of people were like, a lot of people, even I was included in that. When I was watching when I was watching a lot of when I first saw the statues of Ramses, I was like, maybe it doesn't really look black. But then I saw the painting depicting him as the same color as Nubians. I was like, well, there is something that tells you he's black. Now these features, the King's monologue proved that they're just typical African features. They're there in Africa. And there we go. We're getting there. We're getting there. Nasrat the Third. So accurate. Look at those. Look at this. Shout outs to the king. Man. And then we're getting there. We're getting to what I wanted. I wanted to show you guys. This. Yes. Do you see these features? This is what you see on that statue. And the way he transitioned between the other statue, the way King transitioned between the other statue, the reconstruction, and this other statue, you see the features are the same. You're like, wait, nah, this is crazy. This is crazy stuff. This is crazy stuff. We gotta like this one. Look at that. This is Amenemhat III. Amenemhat III. Great job, the King's monologue. Anybody who's not following, who's in the chat, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Right? So, we're here. So, our great scholars, Dr. Chancellor Williams and Diop, saw this. So, all these things, all these statues, all these things, and we're gonna sit up here and act like, no, these are charlatans that wanted Egypt to be black. No, I've explained to you where they came from. They were reading. And then they looked at the statues and it matched with what they were reading. These were black people with locks like this, twist locks like this. Then you have a face like this, high cheekbones, very prominent. Sobek Neferu. And I saw in the video King's monologue, the latest live of the King's monologue, one of the latest lives where he went over the features of the statues of black people, basically, of black people. Yeah, the features of black people. Let me see if I can show you the live so that you can go check it out later on, I guess. Yeah. This live, where he was explaining how the features, how all these African features, there I learned this. That these prominent cheekbones are very typical of Africans. And you can see this in an actress like Angela Bassett. Her and Sobek Neferu really look alike. They really do. Let me drink some water, people. Yeah, stay hydrated. Look at those prominent cheekbones. Look at the lips of these two women. Very similar. And when you look at the profile picture, you see what the King's monologue was talking about in his live. You know, like, people go check out that live. It's very, very interesting what you learn from that. Like this, you see this spot here above just below the eye. Yes, that is what he was talking about. Very typical of Africans. You don't see that in many people around the world, but you see that very much in Africa. So these are the statues they saw. Amenhotep III, looking like this. Oh, and this is a thing, again, that you will find about these pictures. These are reconstructions, but these are the most accurate reconstructions of paintings that I've ever seen in ancient Egypt. These are the most accurate. They look ancient. They feel ancient. But they are reconstructions. And guess what Wikipedia calls them? Afrocentric reconstructions. I'm like, well, the Afrocentrists are the best reconstructionists of ancient paintings of Kemet, because they're not trying to go and claim that they were anything other than what they were, black people. And to prove to you that these reconstructions are indeed very accurate, you look at this video from someone who went to the Museum of Paris, and listen to him.
Greetings.
I don't think you can hear very well, but
in terms of phenotype, it doesn't get any better to this.
look at that. Do you see? We're gonna compare very shortly. This is in the museum in Paris. In Paris. So this is not an invention. It's how his artist depicted him.
Look at the lips, look at the nose. This is a king, not a minor king. A king that ruled.
Look at that. 3 portraits.
When Kemet was truly
Ancient.
prosperous, you can also see the lips and
The
actual hair.
So you can see, from the original to the reconstruction, there is a good continuation. There is good reconstruction. Very accurate. Very. Super accurate. Oh, the skin is not so dark. Well, this paint here is 3,000 plus years old or something. And this one is not. That's why the colors had to be vivid, more vivid than this. That's what we know, because this black was probably not this black. It was probably not as black as this. It was probably more black, darker than this. So again, another lie they try to spread about these pictures, that these 2 pictures are not accurate reconstructions of this, but they very much are. Probably some of the best reconstructions I've ever seen. So it's like, oh, Nubians are Hamites from Asia, blah blah. Okay, all right, then we just look at these pictures, right? Like Amenhotep with his full lips there. All these pictures are what Diop saw. Pharaohs, kings, queens from Kemet, nobles, having these kind of phenotypes, skin color, all these, the hair. Look at this. Look at these 2 women. How they look so similar. Look at them. Just look at them. Look at these statues from West Africa. And then here is Kemet, Nile Valley, subnasal prognatism, full lips, both of them, flat. You see the nose, Africans always have a very flat nose, blah, blah, blah. See the protrusion on both of them around the level of the nose? It's basically the same. Just that one has somewhat of a lesser subnasal prognatism than the other. This is an observation that Diop did in his book as well. And you see these things like this, things like having people, afros like this. You see the afro in ancient Kemet. You see these things. And as sociologists, Dr. Williams was a sociologist. Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop was also a sociologist, PhD sociologist. They saw these cultural practices and they were like, nah, these were typical African people. These were typical African peoples. Practices like this, wearing something around the waist and nothing on top, because it's a tropical environment, it's a hot environment, and we have skin, melanin, that is not afraid of the sun, that actually enjoys from being out in the sun. So we dress up like this. Cultural dressing of the entire Africa. The entirety of Africa was dressing like this. Practices of headdress. This is West Africa, all the way west, across the desert. The headdress practice and depiction of their kings in this fashion remained true. West Africa, Northeast Africa, Kush, Kemet. The same practices. Same cultural practices again. We explored this in many videos, right? Courtesy of Mr. Imhotep's channel, for example, when he compared these 2 women, Mahat and a Sudanese woman. Shout out to Mr. Imhotep. Look at this. We have all these things, all these cultural practices of the Dinka dance that you find in pre-dynastic Kemet, all the way to the dynastic period, as we observed in one video. Like Kemet and East Africa, the connections between Kemet and East Africa, very deep connections. All these are still there, very practiced in Africa to this day. So Cheikh Anta Diop and Dr. Chancellor Williams saw all these things. They saw all these practices. I'm just reiterating what they said. I'm just pointing out to all those things. Because I went to verify them, as they said. Verify, and if you find that I am lying, drag me through the mud. Direct knowledge is important, as Diop said. This is the direct knowledge we need. You go there, you go and find, okay, let me see if it's true. Like, why did he say that? Let me go fact check him. These are the pictures. See. The Afro still being practiced in Africa to this day. Everywhere where you find black people, you find the Afro being worn. You find the Afro being worn. It was practiced in Kemet and Kush thousands of years ago. You see these women still wearing headgears like this. Decorations, Ethiopian women, beautiful skin, beautiful women. You see these hairstyles, this hair texture that is depicted in Kemet, in this woman, the wife of a nobleman. Full lips, typical Ethiopian nose there. Dark brown skin like the beautiful Ethiopian women here. They saw all these practices. They saw all these similarities. They saw all these comparisons. Look at this. This is a comparison that Diop did again in his book. Look at the full lips on this beautiful Leife statue. Then the two Kemite princesses, the shape of the nose, the shape of the lips. All these they saw. All these were seen. They were seen. And so they concluded that these were black people. But was it only that? All this we saw in these videos. Like in this video I made, you can go check it out on my channel, comparing Upper Africa, right? Ancient Egypt and Upper Africa. Basically Inner Africa, right? Like West Africa, Central African statues, comparing them to Kemet. Then I was like, okay, let's get deeper. Let's go deeper in the subject. Is there any evidence of migration, of any cultural things, of any cultural elements that spreads throughout the continent? We found the evidence, the studies, the books, the scholars highlighting them. Not only African scholars, but European scholars, American scholars, many scholars throughout the world. Then we went East Africa and Kemet. Studies upon studies showing the cultural practices, artifacts, archaeological documents, Kemet in East Africa. We did all that. We showed all this. And these are things that Dr. Chancellor Williams and Diop went over before us. And they saw this. So that's the sociological aspect, the anthropological aspect. They saw this. And both of them came to the same conclusion. Sociologically and anthropologically, the ancient Egyptians were just like any other black African. And there is a unity, a cultural unity throughout Africa. Both Diop and William ended up having the same conclusion. The same. And then we went over the statues. All this we did before. The statues, every dynasty, we went to every dynasty. We saw that the statues of the pharaohs depict typical African features. We saw that the tombs depict typical brown skin. We saw that the Greeks did call the ancient Egyptians black. We saw all that. But it was not only that. For example, Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop studied the skin of the mummies. He studied the skin of mummies. And he found that they had high melanin content. High melanin content. Very high. Very high melanin content. This is what we saw. This is what he saw. And it was later confirmed by this great lady as well. This great scholar as well from Germany. I believe, yeah, she's a biologist. And she was like, well, let's study the mummies of Kemet, nobles. And let's see if we can revive the skin tissues. And what does she say about the skin tissue? Packed with melanin. As to be expected, because this is a specimen of Negroid origin. Indirectly peer reviewing the study done by Cheikh Anta Diop during the Cairo Symposium. And Dr. Williams, what did he do? He went to Africa. After reading all that information, he went on site. This is amazing. He went on site. He was like, let me go see now for myself. And where did he start? The Nile Valley. Goes to the Nile Valley. Reads, sees all that we saw, all the statues, all this information. And what does he conclude? Same thing as Diop. These were black people. Come on. These were black people. Leave it. Then he goes all the way to West Africa, Central Africa, Southern Africa. Visits everything. And he's like, I've seen a cultural unity in Africa. And this is not anybody saying this. This is a sociologist, a PhD sociologist and historian. So he knows what he's talking about. He knows what to study in a society to notice that these are the same cultural practices. These are cultural practices that define these people around the entire continent. This is a sociologist. And so this is what these two guys did. These two great men. This is what they did. This is what they discovered. And later, they published their results. The results of their research. We have Diop, who published his results in, I think, 1954. In 1954, Diop published a big book, first in French. This is a translation. First, he published it in French. Nation Nègre Culture. Big book detailing all that he had found, that Egypt was Black African. Because, you see, he had studied pre-colonial Black Africa about, he had studied all that before. He had seen West Africa. When he brought it up with people, they were like, okay, sure. But when he brought up Egypt, people were not okay with that. And he saw this great debate that continued on, and he published everything in this book. Now you can have the translation here. And he did the linguistic work in the French version, but they removed it in the English version because it was too technical for the layperson to read, which is true. It's not easy. So this is Diop publishing all his research. Right, this is a book. This is the book Pre-Colonial Africa was talking about. All he discovered, like, about the history of West Africa, Southern Africa, and the Great Zimbabwe there, and all the Congo. He published. He wrote it all about. He wrote about it all here. But you would never hear this from the detractors. They would have you believe that Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop is just someone who cares only about Egypt and didn't care about the history of Africa and wants to give Africa this this grand narrative that did not exist, this mythical history, which is not true. And anybody who says that clearly did not read Diop. They did not, like Lefkowitz. Because when Mary Lefkowitz is actually funny, when she was in a debate with Dr. John Henry Clark, he was like, did you read this? She was like, no, I haven't read, but I'll read. Oh, come on. Then you come, why would you criticize? Anyway, this is the information. This shows you again. They were not after Egypt. They stumbled upon Egypt. In their own words, each of them said, I stumbled upon Egypt in my research. I was not even looking to it, but I stumbled upon it. And same, Cheikh Anta Diop, sociologist and anthropologist, what does he come up with? The cultural unity of Black Africa. L'unité culturelle de l'Afrique noire. Cultural unity of Black Africa, again saying the same thing. Black Africa is culturally united. Wherever you go, it's the same culture. It's the same culture with variations, but it's the same culture when you look deeper. This is what they don't want you to know. This is what they don't want people to know, that Black Africa has this deep, same culture. And these are the same conclusions that Dr. Chancellor Williams, after 16 years of research, published in his book, The Destruction of Black Civilization. But now this one has all these three books that Cheikh Anta Diop wrote, 1, 2, and 3. They're all concluded here. They're all here. But now with Diop is that if you read this book, you have the evidence, right? You have the method behind it, all the quotes, all the stuff, right? But in Dr. Chancellor Williams, you have statements. He's like, this is the fact. And if you go research, you're going to find out. And it's true. When you go research, whatever Dr. Williams claims here, many of the things he claims here, well, turns out they're true. The culture on pre-colonial Black Africa, Dr. Chancellor Williams says it all here as well. He actually studied the spread, for example, of the Lunda. This is like, I'm a Lunda man, and I'm from my parents. Like I'm a Lunda, right? In Congo, I'm a Lunda, and I learned from Dr. Chancellor Williams something that I did not learn in school. I don't remember learning it in school. Dr. Chancellor Williams was like, the Lunda have a very interesting way of propagating the empire. It wasn't through war, but it was through sort of a soft power thing. They used to come and show you their might, and show you their economic might, their army, but also they will tell you, look, we are basically the same people. Look at our history. Look at this. Doesn't your history say that too? Then you would have no choice but to be like, yeah, it's kind of true. Okay, let me join the team, and they would grow the empire just like that. But of course, there were always the stubborn ones that were like, I don't care, man. I don't care if my grandfather was also your grandfather. If you go. But of course, yes, that's when they would use military power. But their first method was soft power. Come, hey, listen, we're the same people. So basically a federated state, like where they would just approach people. I learned this in this book. So pre-colonial Black Africa can be found in this book too. And then you can find in here the cultural unity of Black Africa. He says it. He says there is a cultural unity throughout Africa, throughout the eras. They've been practicing the same kind of culture. And here in Diop's book, you find what? The evidence, the details. You find the details, the quotes, the scholarly background, the scholarly stuff like, yes, these are the quotes, this is why I think so. But Dr. Chancellor Williams, he tells you, he teaches you. This is a volume for people to read and be like, okay, this is interesting. Further research, go do further reading. All that is compiled here. I don't even know how he did it. He compiled all 3 books here in one book. Great book. And Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop has another book, because these two men reached the same conclusion. Same conclusions. That Africa must unite. Black people must unite. Throughout the world, we should have a black unity. These 2 books said it. And Cheikh Anta Diop wrote a 4th book to say that, while Chancellor Williams compiled it in his book. This is so great. Come on. Guys, I don't know if you understand my enthusiasm here. It's just mind-blowing how these 2 have the same, very same. They had this very same approach, and they concluded the same things. One is in America, one is Africa/Europe studying, and they come up with the same thing, with the same conclusions, political conclusion of that Africa, the path that Africa must take, and the path that black people throughout the world must take, in the Caribbean, in America, in Africa, and globally. The path that they must take is unity within themselves, then greater unity with the motherland. Both of them said that. In this book by Cheikh Anta Diop, he said that. Great read. Anybody wants to be a leader as well should read this. But anybody wants to be a leader in Africa, and just anybody in Africa, like you black, read this. Read these two books, okay? Read all these lists you saw here. From this one to this one to this one to this one. Read everything to this one and this one. Read everything, okay? These are great books. They open your mind. They really do. Yeah, someone said Lunda people are also in northeast Angola. Yeah, they are. They very much are. I'm a Mukongo from Angola. We're all Bantu people. We are. We definitely are. Also read Dr. George G.M. James. Stole Legacy. I think it's Stolen Legacy. 1954. A very beautiful read. Okay, this is an interesting book. I'll check it out. I'll definitely check it out. Yeah. And then so you have these two scholars, again, separated by miles, and they ended up with the same conclusions. One wrote everything in one book, the other wrote 4 books. Black Africa is not actually a big book. It's a very tiny book. Very easy read. If you read fast, you're gonna find out everything. These are the two scholars, the great men, Dr. Chancellor Williams and Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop. They met other great men like Dr. John Henry Clark, Johan, Yosef Ben Yochanan. They met, all of these guys met. They met Dr. Teofilo Benga. But the guy I think who met everyone is Dr. John Henry Clark. He met everybody, man. It's just amazing. And reading through John Henry Clark's works, you can tell that this is a man who met great people. And it is a great man who met great people, and just, yeah, he gives us great stuff. And then we have these great scholars. All of them loved giving lectures, teaching. These are basically teachers. Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop, a teacher at University of Dakar. There's a university named after him in Senegal, University Cheikh Anta Diop. They finally recognized him, right, as Cheikh Anta Diop, a teacher, researcher, in the lab coats there, doing experiments. Great teacher. And then you have Dr. Williams, also a great teacher. I think he taught at Howard University. He was a professor there for years as well. Great. These were teachers. Men who wanted to know about their past, learned about it, and wanted to share their knowledge with everyone. The need was so great that they just wrote a book. Because when you discover so many things like this, you just want to tell everyone. And you're like, how can I tell everyone? Let me write a book. You have so much to say, so much to discuss with many people. And look, Africans are not interested in their history. They don't care. Look at all the people around Cheikh Anta Diop. Just happy to see a man. Great. This is stuff like, black people are not interested in blah 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 blah. This book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, is called the Black Men's Bible. Black people have been the ones that have pushed this book, and they dubbed it the Black Men's Bible. This was not gonna be published if it wasn't for great efforts from black people. Look who's there. All happy to see these two great men who had discovered that Kemet was part of Black African history, just as Nubia, just as Aksum, just as Mali, just as Congo, Lunda, Mwenemotapa, all these great kingdoms in Africa. Kemet should be considered as one of them. Period. And this is how they discovered everything. This is how. Now, we're almost reaching the end of the live stream. We're just gonna read a few questions. Super chat from Joe 4040. Thank you for the generous donation. Read Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Yeah, I read that too. Tariq Nassid, Race Baiter, that one I did not read. Confession of an Economic Hitman is just revealing and heartbreaking, but also very useful work. Because a lot of people comment will tell you about how Africa, right? How Africa and all these countries in the Caribbean and how black people in America, oh, look at them. They're not evolving because they're so lazy. They don't know how to do things because they're unintelligent. And then Confession of an Economic Hitman just tells you that no, we've been killing anybody who's don't know if the word killing is, we've been Xing anybody who disagrees with us and wants great things for our people or for their people. That's what that man is saying. Patrice Emery Lumumba, he was involved. Musée, Laurent Désiré, all those great leaders. You know, the way they kept trying to X Fidel Castro because he was inspiring everyone. Yeah, that man was involved. The man who wrote that book, I was involved. He basically tells you that the US, the CIA, and the West is basically manufacturing the poverty of Africa. Like whenever a leader has great ideas for his people, they come and want to kill him. Because it's not useful for the West. It's not useful for their economic ventures. So, great book to read. It gives you an insight in history that many people like to overlook. Be like, oh, I don't know. You see, don't blame us. We don't have any responsibility. It's on you. I know we have to get to bear the responsibility, but we have to remind you that you guys are not blameless either. You're not blameless. And especially ignoring the fact that these people, these vicious people from European governments and American governments who were after Africa, after the poverty of Africa, like they were like, Africa needs to be poor. And when you ignore that history, it basically leaves the new generation thinking that, oh, these are people, like they would think that European governments and all these other governments are just their friends. All right, different. No, be very cautious. Because the past history has taught us that these are no friends. And I'm talking here about the government. Okay, I'm not talking about the every European person, or no, it's the governments, the leaders, the elites. Hey, yeah. So that's a great book. Everybody should read it. Let's see. Many black people have read and studied these books by Diop and Williams. Great books. They have indeed. They have. Now we need to emphasize them in schools, in universities especially. Whenever you do African studies, whenever you do historical studies of Africa, you need these books out there. It's gotta be the go-to books. You can't You can't go through university without reading these books. That's basically what we should do with these books. Even if you're a science major, I don't know, an engineering major, you take a class reading Diop's book, reading Williams' book, at least. Yeah. Okay, just tune in. Will you be having the sessions on regular basis? Oh, just chimed in. Okay. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna be trying. If I have an idea for a live, I just do the live, right? If I don't have any idea for a live, I just keep quiet. That's basically. So I'm gonna be trying to have a live session at least twice a month. So yeah, we have a live to do with the King's Bundle. King, you there? I haven't forgotten about our live. Let's get into the live again. Like, we need to do another live session. Yeah, let's go. The debunker is in the chats. Greatest help to the channel. The debunker, greatest help. How Europe underdeveloped Africa. On my reading list, this one. On my reading list. It's literally there, but it's just so busy these days. Oh my god. But yeah, I need to read this book. See documentary, The Signs of God's Existence. I have never heard of this one. Dr. Ben also is great. Dr. Ben is also great. Yeah, I remember when I was discovering all this knowledge, I sat through a Dr. Ben Yokanen's lecture. Like, I think I sat through 2 of them. Like, it was like 4 hours, maybe combined. You know, maybe one was like 2 hours something. Like, I sat through it all. And I just ate it in one sitting. I was like, wow, amazing. And his confidence, like, I love when I love when Ben Yokanen goes like, we don't believe this. We know. We know. It's not a belief. We know. This is knowledge. Okay? This is a fact. So we know. It's not a belief. We know. And I love it. I love it. I just love that confidence. We don't believe it. We know. Black Men of the Nile and his family. I love this. Book suggestions. Book suggestions. Keep dropping the book suggestions. I love it. I love it. We need to foster this community of readers, you know. Look at these 2 men. These 2 men got to where they are. Got all this knowledge by reading intensely. They read so much. So much. Hey, KueliMika, the debunker. Hey, man. Hey, man. King, indeed, you disappeared. Sorry, man. Sorry. Been busy lately. Work has been busy and family stuff. Always needing to move through. Like, whenever I need to do something, I need to leave the work site and go to the city and all that. Like, last weekend as well, I needed to go. And this weekend, I was like, okay, let me pop in with this live. Let me do, and I'm actually doing it today because I was busy on Saturday. I was actually supposed to do it on the night from Saturday to Sunday. Yeah, here in Congo. So I think for those who are in America, that would be on Friday, I think. But for those in Europe, the UK, like King, that would be almost the same time as mine here. Like, we just have like 2 hours difference. Yeah. But yeah, we gotta do that live. We gotta jump. we gotta jump Metatron. The first jumping was good, man. We gotta jump him. Okay, KueliMika, I know this is out of topic, But what are your thoughts on the current mainstream ancient Egyptian chronology? Do you think it's too conservative? The current mainstream puts it, oh no, Egypt is what do they say? 3,150 to 3,200 to actually some say 3,500 BC. Some like okay. And then they go all the way to the Ptolemaic period and include it. And I think 3,000, okay, the mainstream would go back to 3000 BC, basically. I've heard many people say 3000 BC. And then when you go read further, some scholars are like, no, it's 3,500 BC, the first Nakadan period to all the way to the Badarian period. So some people push it back to the Badarian period. And that's where I also go to. The Badarian period is where I start. But Dynastic Kemet, I don't think it's too conservative, because they started around 3200 BC, the third Nakadan period. So it's okay. That's where the evidence points to. But in terms of the people who moved to the Nile Valley, the northern part of the Nile Valley, I think some of them are too conservative. I think it started all the way back to the 4000 something BC, 4000 something BC. So like 3900 to 4000 BC. Because I think Kush as well, the mainstream narrative on Kush is also very conservative. It's saying like, no, Kush is just 3,800 years old. I'm like, really? They achieved that level of culture, and you wanna give the age at the age of that culture, like the date the artifacts are dated from? No. You have to push it back at least 500 years. At least 1,000 years, because it takes time to achieve that kind of culture. So that's my point. That's my stand on Kush. I think Kush they're much more conservative on Kush. King said Champollion the Younger had it at 5070 something BC. They settled to, would be older than no other reason. Yeah, so that Mesopotamia would be older. I do see that as well, because for example, Diop said the calendar of Kemet was created in 4236 BC. So you are at the level of culture to have created a calendar that is still used to this day. But your civilization started. I think Kemite civilization, I think when you talk about the Nile Valley civilization, I think it's just nice to start with Kush, because they are Kemet and Kush. I now start seeing what Dr. Chancellor Williams says. Kemet was just Nubia's northern province. Nubia's northern colony, Ethiopia's northern colony. Because this is basically what the information, the data on that part gives us. Really, it really gives us that kind of knowledge that is probably when you connect the cultures. Dynastic Kemet, I would say, started as the evidence points to, is 3,200 BC, something like that. But the culture that fostered them, the culture that brought them there, is far older than that, probably 5,000 BC. The culture that brought them there is older than that. So but anyways, we just need scholarly research on this, trying to verify everything, all the information. Field research, the Dr. Brown shot are uploaded here online. Okay, I don't know. Okay, KueliMika, we can push it more further to the Kadan culture, 15k BC. The Kadan culture, I've never heard of this one. I'll look into it. I'll look into it and see what it's about. Okay, maybe you can give us a book to read and give a date to discuss it. Rose from Chicago. Okay, I like a book club. Problem is I don't have much time between making videos and doing the occasional live and work, family as well. Really don't have enough time. But it's an idea. I don't know. It's an idea. It's an idea. If you view from the perspective, they are pretty. They're pity. What? Devious and petty, you are likely to get a better view of them. And Mesopotamia was invaded. They're partial to it because of who currently lives there. Yeah, true, like the Mesopotamians as well. Because the narrative is that Mesopotamians are definitely Caucasians, right? Even though there is a lot of information that points to the fact that black people reached that region and established themselves in that region. There's information on that. We will need to dig deeper as well. We'll need to dig deeper to study that part. They don't want to deal with Kush because they have to go deep into the Western Desert. Exactly. They will have to Naptaplaya and so on. Exactly. When you actually look at Naptaplaya pushes the cultures, the civilizations, the culture of the civilization to 10,000 to 11,000 BC. Easily pushes it back to that. So it's really interesting. It's really, really interesting. They avoid that because the people who had the Naptaplaya probably most likely moved down, and they were the same people. Naptaplaya. Interesting, yeah. What's your thoughts in regards to race relations in America and where we are heading into the future? Okay, race relations in America. I'm just gonna have to not answer that question now. And we're gonna discuss this later, like when we get into the topic, because I want to get deeper into the topic of. I don't really want to get into the topic of race relations with other and all that, but I want to get into the relations within ourselves, because there is division between Africans and black people throughout the world, right? Like there is a division, but there is bridges being built to unite the people. It's very slow, but it's happening. From the music department, economic, it's very slow. The music department is moving. So I was having a conversation with someone in the comment section, and I said that I wanted to get into this topic of the so-called diaspora wars. And just give each other the perspective, because I've heard ignorant stuff from both sides. Like everywhere you just hear some ignorant stuff, and I wanted to go give a deep dive, and so that we can see that we're brothers, and we should unite as all the leaders who've been assassinated have urged us to do. From Malcolm X, even Martin Luther King was at the end wanted to reconnect with Africa, I believe. Like study, because like he regarded also Africa as the place of his ancestors, you know. Marcus Garvey, you know, Kwame Nkrumah, Africa must unite. And when he meant that, whenever they approached him about the Caribbeans and America, he said, yes, them too must be in the fold. And of course, he got assassinated. Guys, we've reached 2 hours of the live. We're going to cut it short. I'm just going to take 2 more questions and we're going to call it a day. Read Black Genesis, The Prehistoric Origins of Ancient Egypt by Robert Bauval. Robert Bauval is someone I've heard as well mentioned a lot. Yeah. KueliMika, I need to do more research, but I think the ancient Egyptian chronology was intentionally compressed to line up with Mesopotamia. Yeah. You're right on that, because there's always this debate. For example, when you look at the writing of Kemet and Mesopotamia, you go into the reading, the studies and all that. They're just lining up. Oh no, ancient Egyptian writing is just at the same time as Mesopotamia, but there is much more evidence that points to the fact that Nubia had created that form of writing much earlier. And given the culture of Africans of always hiding such things as writing because they consider it sacred. But of course, with evolution in the culture and mindset of people, they shift their perspective and make it more public. But of course, they won't consider that as evidence because they would say it's speculative. But for Mesopotamia, as Dr. Diop pointed out, he was like, where are the tablets from Mesopotamia that I was about, like that are earlier than Kemet? And then they went, oh no, there is a clay tablet here that is 8,000 years old. A shady tablet, to say the least. Anyway. Yeah, you're right on that, I think. They compressed the timeline to line it up with Mesopotamia. Because, like, I read in Diop's book, for example, that the earliest Mesopotamian kings are mentioned in 2800 BC. The first king in Kemet is mentioned in 3200 BC. That's the king, the dynastic Kemet. And we know that the dynastic part is just a culmination of previous kings that were already ruling there for centuries. So you can push that back. But Mesopotamia, the first kings, 2800 something BC. The earliest kings or something like that. The strong, concrete evidence, I think. But of course they will say, no, there was this, there was that, this, we found this evidence here. Anyway, it's just something to dig deeper in. Like, I would really like to dig deeper. Anyway, guys, I think we're gonna call it a day. Oh, Grassy Grassy joined us. Hi, Grassy. Semitic alphabet were stolen from Egypt. That is true. The Semitic alphabet was taken from Egypt. They have accepted it. There was a guy, Native Lang, a YouTube channel, made a video about the history of writing, 1 million views. He says it in there. Independently in their own nations, right? Like, why didn't it develop independently in their own nations? Right? Because they didn't have writing. They didn't have writing. This is the thing about Africa. You know, Africa invented so many forms of writing. Africa invented writing all over the place. Like, you go to West Africa, they invented. You go to Central Africa, they invented. You go to Southern Africa, there is forms of writing that were born. You go to East Africa, forms of writings. It's really like, as these two great men said, a cultural unity. It's a cultural thing for Africans to eventually create a form of writing. First, keep it secret, sacred, and then develop it and publish it to everyone. We know where the writing came from. It's documented. They tried to hide it, indeed. Right? Why is it that Kemet is the one that inspired everyone? Like, the first form of writing, many the first form of writing basically is hieroglyphic, but they won't admit it. Oh no, it's cuneiform, blah blah blah. No, it's hieroglyphic, ideographic, and all. So yeah. Thank you again for the super chat from Joe4040. Joe4040. Thank you for the generous donation. We appreciate it. Listen to Tariq Nasheed. He loves all black people. Tariq Nasheed. Tariq Nasheed. Who's Tariq Nasheed? Oh, look into him. Okay, guys. We're gonna end the live here. See you in the next live session, okay? See you in the next live session. It was really great to have you guys here. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you all. And peace.